Hello there and welcome back to another video here on the Master Moldy channel. Now, as requested by you guys, today's video is going to be going over 10 illegal techniques that some of which you may even be using right now, especially if you're into building mocks. Some of these are really cool snot techniques and different ways you can get plates out of Lego's usual system build, which we'll cover exactly what system means in a second. But if you stay to the end of the video, there is one bonus technique that I think you'll be in for a surprise. But right now, let's get straight into the video. Now, before we begin, it might help to explain to you what exactly in system means. So with Lego, bricks tend to connect just like so, studs on top of other studs, and this is considered in system. Now, if you were to rotate these, this is no longer in system as the bricks cannot connect to other bricks, and by that I mean if you had a brick like this, there is no way of connecting these without using other features. And that is actually where most of these illegal techniques come from, trying to connect different bricks on the side that just simply don't belong there. So with that, we come to our first illegal technique. Now, one of the pieces we need for this is very old. In fact, they stopped making it back in the 70s, and that is any sort of plate or modified tile without a groove. Now, the modern day plates tend to not have any grooves in them, but pretty much since the 70s, every single tile will. So there are a few exceptions. I think the grill tiles did go up until the 90s before they had their groove put in. And I keep mentioning this word a lot, groove. Well, what is the groove? For that, we in fact need to bring in a new jumper plate so you can see the difference between them. Now, if my camera would like to focus, you can see that on the left piece there is right at the bottom a little lip that you don't get on this older piece. Now, you'll see this on all the different tiles that you'll get in any new sets. That little corner bit that looks like it's missing is actually an indent, and in Lego we call that a groove. Now, I'm sure Lego has a few other official names, but if you're searching on Bricklink, this is what it means when it says it's with a groove. And of course, the older piece, you can see it's just the same as a plate. There is no groove. So I'll zoom in on that so you get to see it better. It's a bit like a brick. You can see here, this brick simply just does not have a groove. That's the same across many plates, but all tiles for the last few decades have been given this groove. And what's that got to do with illegal techniques? Well, if I grab two plates, you can see that they simply do not go together any easy way. In fact, I can force them if I put quite a lot of pressure there, but even then it's not down fully, and over time splitting these two studs will cause for the plate to just bend in ways it really shouldn't, in or out of system builds. And that is an illegal technique, because over time this plate will get damaged and mold out of its original shape. Now, there is a way you can do it legally, and I'm afraid it's not with the pieces without a groove. In fact, anything without a groove just doesn't want to go between the two studs, and even if you force it, it doesn't fully go down, and over time will wear down the plate. Now, Lego perhaps have used that technique in a few older sets, and even though it's illegal at the time, they wouldn't have known until they let it run its course and found out over time the bricks indeed are worn down. Now, with the groove, if you were to put a plate between two studs, it might be a bit of a struggle to get the angle, but once you've got the angle, you can see it just goes in and out pretty easily. I'm not quite sure what the science is behind it, but the groove must make the plate a bit thinner towards the bottom, and that is where the problem occurs. So anything with that groove, you can check any sort of tiles and modified tile or plate pieces with that groove can now stand on a plate, and that's a completely legal technique, which means you can connect this plate onto that stud, and because they're all in system respective to this plate on its side, this is a completely legal build. So there are ways of going around it and making these sort of techniques legal without damaging any of the Lego pieces. Another illegal technique that I don't really see as much anymore, I think it's quite an obvious illegal technique, is with these Technic pins. You can see the pins go into the Technic brick, and because they've got that little ring to expand, that almost groove-like feature in the Technic brick, they're able to stay in there and they hold quite nicely. However, this soon becomes an illegal technique when you use any sort of stud connection to snap it on. You can see it's made a snapping noise, but it's where you've pushed it past the pressure point here and forced the brick on. So it's not a nice snapping noise, even if it does sound a bit nice. And this goes for the round 1x1 bricks as well. This will slowly wear down the Technic pin and not only may put some pressure on the Technic pin itself, but where it can't expand anywhere, you're just pushing in the tip, which is slightly wider than the tube itself. You might just be able to see on camera, and it just ruins the Technic pin. So that is indeed another illegal technique. Of course, the legal side to it being just using these Technic bricks. That's what they're made for. They've got the hole in them, and if you wanted to extend it a bit further, there are different sort of pins and axle connections that will allow you to do that. Of course, if you're trying to put a brick on the side, you might as well just use the connection piece, which is half a pin, and it has the stud on the side to enable you to attach any sort of bricks, plates, and really anything that has the stud connection. So there are different pins for different purposes, and the easiest way to get this out is with a Technic pin. However, you can also use a brick separator to push out your pins. So if you didn't know that, now you do. There are different colours for different purposes, and perhaps that'll have its own video in the future. So stay tuned for that this week, and if you're interested in that, be sure to subscribe, and we'll get onto this sort of connection later on in the video. The next connection involves, I guess, most of these pieces. You'll see why this is included here in a second. But you may have seen it before where people purposely just create a difficult life for themselves, putting cheese slopes in the bricks. Lego literally have a poster on this sort of connection, and it's sort of like a Halloween-esque type, as these bricks can get stuck in here quite easily, and then pushing a plate on, and that does not feel very comfortable. But as you can see, it's somewhat a double-sided brick. This is so illegal. It just puts too much strain on these 4 cheese slopes, which now are pretty much stuck in. You can see they don't even stick out that much, so it's not a strong connection. If I was just to try and hold it on top, it's not going to hold on. There is no clutch power in there, and now I'm stuck with the task of getting out these cheese slopes, and that is why this is here. If you do ever experience these pieces stuck in, be sure to grab a spanner and you can get it just underneath the slope, which enables you to push it up. Perhaps I can show you on the side. You wedge it just underneath and sort of use it as a lever to press it up. It's not the easiest to get rid of, so there you go. It's just hung somewhere across the desk, and I'll have to look for that later. But that is why you should really hold your finger over the top here, stop it pinging out, and it's just really not a nice technique. It's an illegal build, and Lego just doesn't recommend it. It damages these bricks. They have a chance of splitting, and even getting them out of the brick, there's probably a chance of breaking 1 or 2 of the different bricks. So that's completely illegal. Of course, if you're trying to connect these pieces, just connect them the system way. There are plenty other ways of connecting pieces upside down that we'll look at later on in the video, as many of them too are illegal. There are certain pieces that have studs both sides that allow you to connect it, and especially some complicated bracket work. So if you want to see some tips for building some, I guess, Snot Bricks, which of course again stands for studs not on top, let me know, and that can be its own video. And I have found the cheese slope, by the way. It was just above the camera. The next technique is an interesting technique, as it's one I'm sure many of you have used and not even known it is an illegal technique. In fact, I'm sure Lego have fallen victim to this build quite a few times, and that is just a snot brick with a brick on top of any of these Lego patented studs. Now, as you can see, it might not look illegal at first, but it's definitely a very illegal piece. You see, the studs are fine to have been underneath it if they were plain. The problem comes with the actual Lego logo on the studs, which Lego completely forgot to account for when building the bricks, or perhaps it's something that they didn't really need this technique to decide to go with anyway. If there was some sort of tile on underneath, it would be fine. This Lego logo makes the stud stick up just enough that it puts pressure on this brick and is no longer aligned, which makes this a completely illegal technique. And sure, on its side, that is a legal technique. The only difference is the stud underneath. So there are a few ways of using this technique instead. For instance, if you use this brick with a technic hole, it doesn't have to be a 1x1, but if you use that brick and put a brick in there using the stud, that is completely legal. You see, the technic holes actually raise up enough to allow the brick to be on top of the Lego stud without causing any problems. And of course, the other option would be to get this 1x6 brick with the hollow studs on top. You can see the Lego logo is still in there right at the bottom, but as the studs are hollow and there's no Lego pattern on top, this makes this a legal technique. So it does get a bit technical when we're speaking about illegal techniques. However, there are definitely ways of working around, and you can even get studs and round 1x2s that have these hollow studs that will work for a legal technique. Please ignore the cut on my thumb. That's actually from the corner of my Mos Eisley diorama that I caught my thumb on, and I actually caught my knuckle too, so I hope that's not too much of a distraction. Now, speaking of these Technic pieces, you can actually connect them to Snot Bricks to come up with some pretty cool angles. You can see you can turn it to pretty much any degree you want to, and combine two of these, you've got the full 360 in both axes. But did you know that it's actually illegal to have this built in a system model? So no matter where on the build, you cannot connect the two of them, as you can probably somewhat see the bottom of the pink and the top of the grey have a little gap between each of the plate and brick. And that is because if I remove these plates, which is never easy to do, you can probably just about see the difference in height between each of them. The pink brick is just higher than the grey. It's honestly a fraction, probably 0.8 of a millimetre, but there is indeed a difference, which means if you include these to your build, they will just wear them down over time, and that makes it an illegal build as you're ruining your Lego bricks. However, if you were to connect these out of system with each other and acknowledge the difference in the height, this is a completely legal technique, and you can even use this to perhaps flip some of your builds. Now, there is a debate as to whether this connection in its entirety is legal or not, as it can put a lot of strain on the Snot brick. However, as long as you're not putting too much weight on it, and both of these builds are supported by their own system of sorts, so perhaps a similar connection point on the other side, I'm sure it's okay. This is actually what I was going to use to cover the top of my Mando diorama, but it ended up being just too technical to cover the little gap that was above the slopes, and in fact I ended up taking out the slopes entirely. So this is how you turn an illegal technique into a legal one. And of course, if you did want to connect two bricks like this, you can always connect two of these Technic bricks with the Technic pin, as that is completely legal. They're the same height, and now you can bridge the difference with a Lego plate. Now, it's not just Snot bricks that cannot be bridged like that. It's also bricks in general, because if you add a brick into the side of a Technic brick like so, you can see that there's just that slight difference in height. The trans orange piece is going to be a bit higher than the red, so putting a plate on top might look fine, but this plate is actually bending upwards and is an illegal technique. Now, this is fine if you were to attach the brick to a Snot brick. You can happily place the plate on top. However, when it is a Technic brick, you just can't. As we approach the final third of illegal techniques for today's videos, you've seen me attach single studs into Technic bricks. Now, if you attach more than one stud, so this goes for two studs, which is very difficult to do. In fact, you can see I can't even get it all the way in there because of the spacing between Technic bricks. This is illegal. They are not spaced out the same as studs. In fact, I think they're just a bit wider. So as you can see, you can't get a brick in there. And even if you manage to get one in there, it's quite a struggle to get the brick out. So that is indeed illegal. Again, if you wanted to attach this 2x2, you can add the stud Technic pins to the side and clip it in. Lego seem to have no problem adding multiple studs across there. It's just something with the holes that they are made for. They're just too tight for the studs to fit in. The next one's a really interesting one. I haven't seen it implemented anywhere, so I'm not sure if it's a common one or not, but it's using 2 axle pieces to connect 2 bricks back to back. And as you can see, it seems like they fit, and somewhat they kind of do. However, this is completely illegal. You can see not only is there some sort of angle between the 2 bricks, but also you put in all the weight on just 2 axles that aren't even fit in system, or at least with their Technic counterparts. And not only is this a struggle to put together, but also a struggle to take apart. Thankfully, the axles themselves do have little ridges which you can grab to pull out, but this is illegal, completely illegal. So what you can do instead is grab these bricks, which I only have in this very nice purpley colour, which have the axle holes in the middle, and most round bricks also have these axle holes. So you can do this with them too and connect them through their axle holes. And now this is a completely legal build, though it is a bit annoying that the axles do not line up either side. So you could perhaps use the brick separator and just shimmy one of them down to match the other. But this is completely legal, and you could even add a 3rd axle in the middle just for integrity. And for the penultimate of the top 10, you can see we do have a 1x1 brick and a 1x1 dome. Now, you'd think that these go together. There is a stud connection that looks alright. However, what you don't know is this is in fact an illegal building technique, and most bricks that go on these round 1x1 cone pieces are indeed illegal, because if you put too much pressure on that cone, it can send the cone through the brick and it will actually cause a split in said brick. And this is because it is a cone shape, so as you can see, enough pressure will just keep going. There is nothing to stop it going down the cone. So how you can make this a legal technique is quite simple, and just put in a stud on top of the cone. You can see not only does that stop the cone pushing up, as the stud is only 1 stud deep, and that will prevent the cone going any further, but also the stud does have the round outer part to its stud shape, which will stop the brick going further down it. So this is an illegal technique, and this is legal, which definitely is annoying because these would make really cool lamps if I don't throw them away first. Now, the penultimate technique we're going to be looking over in this video is of course brick bending. It's very popular. In fact, there are entire channels dedicated to it, and some of the stuff they make is so awesome. It's definitely worth checking out. If you don't know what brick bending is, give it a quick Google, search it on YouTube. There is some really amazing designs that are just so complex, but indeed illegal to Lego building. Now, if I were to drop this on the desk, you can see it doesn't seem that fragile. However, if I included perhaps 2 or 3 times as much of these plates, it's just going to be so fragile. It's going to bend out of shape. You can see you can even bend it a little bit this way. So of course, not a legal technique. And if you are building a Lego MOC that's to be reviewed on for Rebrickable, for ideas, or even just for your own collection, and you want it to last, I'd recommend keeping your bricks in system. The final technique uses just these 2 pieces, and as you can see, if I put this 4-leafed flower piece into this reversed round 2x2 tile, it will stay there and actually has quite a bit of clutch power. And it may surprise you, but this is in fact a completely legal technique. That's right, the bonus technique for today's video is completely legal. We've gone over some illegal builds, so I thought I'd share with you a completely legal technique. And this is really cool because this allows for some really awesome builds. Like, for instance, you could quite easily create a custom mock of Jabba's palace on Tatooine, and you can get some really cool micro builds with it because it allows you to add a round, very short dome to pieces that otherwise you wouldn't be able to. So there is my micro Jabba's palace, and you can even add a few more of these to a Snot Brick, and you have to space them out with a stud. We're keeping things legal for this one, but it creates a cool ball that rolls pretty smoothly. So there are some really cool pieces you can use this for, and just thought I'd end the video on a high with a completely legal technique. So that is all for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know down below if there are any techniques that you've seen in this video that you thought were completely legal, or perhaps you didn't know about this last legal one. Don't forget to drop a like if you enjoyed the video, and subscribe for more awesome Lego content such as this, reviews, mocks, and so much more coming in the new year. And as always, may the bricks be with you.